Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between, and at the end of the episode, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week for a chance for your comment to be featured on this episode and at the end of the episode. So be sure to let me know your pick of the week. Now, jumping into this week's books, I had a pretty moderate haul for the number of books, and number 13 for me this week was Fantastic Four issue 41. I've been really enjoying Fantastic Four, so I'm sad to see that I'm not loving their biggest arc here. It feels very, very, very heavy. There's a lot of word balloons, and it's a very action heavy series. I do think there's some interesting plot points. I do like the idea of what's going on with Reed, and even maybe the possibility of the Thing getting harmed here as well. But the bigger stuff, the worldly stuff, the space stuff is definitely not what I'm interested in. It's just not what I like from Marvel. I'm not a cosmic fan, so I'm definitely just not the audience here. And I think it really takes away from the character moments that Fantastic Four has had some really great moments with, a lot of the family moments that are not in this arc right now. So artwork is pretty solid for the book overall, but it is very cluttered with how wordy it is. So overall, giving that 2 stars, and that is number 13. Moving on to number 12, which is Devil's Reign Spider-Man issue 1, which is a one-shot for the Devil's Reign tie-in here. And, I'm reading Spider-Man. I love Spider-Man, so I'm like, why not pick up this tie-in? I'm not picking up many Devil Reign tie-ins, because, honestly, I haven't been really loving the arc. I love Daredevil, but I feel like that's... I feel like it kind of took away from the momentum of what Daredevil was doing with Devil's Reign. And this one, if you're a fan of Beyond, mostly the Ben stuff, I think you'll like it. If you like the Ben stuff in Devil's Reign, you'll probably like it. It kind of wraps up some things that were going on in those issues. But as someone who only really likes the Peter stuff in Beyond, and I feel like the Ben stuff is actually the weaker aspect, at least in the beginning, and I feel like this is definitely not as tied into what's going on in the Amazing Spider-Man now, which has honestly been a big complaint about Devil's Reign in general. But the artwork is really solid for this one, especially a tie-in. Sometimes you get a little bit of weaker art when it has to just be this like one shot, but I feel like colors were really vibrant here, and the pencils were good as well. So overall, giving it 2.5 stars. I think I just wasn't the crowd for this one. Moving on to number 11, which is What If Miles Morales Became Captain America, issue 1. I love Miles. I love Miles as a character, and I have not been able to read Miles in a while because I don't really love his current run. And I feel like in the past couple of years, they haven't really been able to jive with Miles and tell as good stories as he was in the Ultimate Universe and when Bendis was writing him. But I definitely want some great Miles stories. I feel like Champions had some good Miles stories, some one-offs of him teaming up in other places and not relying so much on his solo series is where the better stories have been for Miles. So I'm like, let's give this a shot. It's something so different. He's becoming Captain America. Now, warranted, I'm not a Captain America fan. I really don't read Captain America comics, so was this the best one to start out with? Not for me personally, but I was interested to see what they were going to do. They're going to do a similar thing with Gwen, and there's definitely been this turn of characters that we know and love becoming other type of characters just because of the success of Spider-Gwen. You had Gwen, who was one character, and then you had this blow up of an even bigger character with Spider-Gwen, and I think they're still trying to continue to do that with others, and also Gwenpool was another example of that. So they're like, let's see if we can make a whole series about this, and they're doing it again with Gwen in this month. I believe it's coming out. That's that multiverse Gwenverse thing. Now, with that one, I believe they're actually all teaming up, though. This one is individual origin stories, and it didn't really do it for me. I think it was just copy and paste. What happened to Miles as Spider-Man? Let's put an angle on Captain America, which, again, you're being sold exactly what it's telling you, but there's not really any refreshing twist, besides that there is a small ending where it shows that it's all going to be connected. But overall, I think I'm going to be skipping the What If Miles Morales stories, even though I think maybe I would have liked Hulk or Wolverine a bit more. We'll see what type of week it is when those are released. Now, moving into number 10, which is Static Shock Season 6, Issue 6. Honestly, I just wanted to finish this one off. I liked it from the beginning, and I liked the more slice of life aspect of it. I enjoyed his family stuff, but once it got to the main plot is when it kind of lost me a bit. I feel like maybe it's the delays that really got to me, where this one was definitely very delayed, even though I think this issue in general was delayed. And now we're going into the season 2 aspect, which I actually like. I like they're doing that with Naomi in a couple of series. It gives, this kind of image style of a release schedule. But I don't know if this gave me enough to say, I need another volume of this. Even though I do think this is a better Static Shock story than we've gotten in a while, especially from the New 52. That one wasn't as good as I think people wanted it to be with the excitement of the television show. I think that's the biggest thing is that it for me, what I liked about this one is that it brought in some of the TV elements and some of the old school comic elements, which is what I enjoyed about it. But as a casual Static fan, I don't know if it gave me enough to want to keep it on my pull list. Even though the artwork, especially the Static aspect of the art, was really good, even if it's a little darker than I expected. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 10, I believe. Moving on to number 9, which is Daredevil, Woman Without Fear, issue 3. This is the last issue of this mini, and Elektra is what got me into this run of Daredevil, and I've been upset that I haven't been enjoying this miniseries as much as I enjoyed her role in the regular Daredevil series. It goes back to Devil Reign kind of ruining the momentum for me for Daredevil, even though they're going to relaunch and hopefully continue that momentum. But this one in particular spoils Devil's Reign issue 5. That was a shock. So there's just like this big spoiler dropped in the middle of the issue, or at the end of the issue, and we're going to see how Elektra deals with that, I guess, in issue 6 of Devil's Reign. But yeah, that was like, whoa, the release schedule was kind of off for this one, or I don't know what happened there, because Chip is writing both stories, so it's not like Chip had to talk to Chip. Chip already talks to Chip. So it definitely had nothing to do with the writing thing and editorial. I think it really just had to do with something was delayed, maybe the paper shortage, and then it got released out of order, and we got a big spoiler about Matt here. I thought this was a little bit of a better issue, though, because my biggest complaint about this book is that it keeps talking about the past, and it kind of got boring and repetitive. I felt like this one did a little bit better at, thematically making it about, her relationship with the Hand, or her relationship with Matt, or her Predator relationship with Kraven. So there's a little bit more nuance in this issue, but I still feel like her journey in Daredevil was a bit stronger than what we were getting here. So overall, giving that 3 stars. We'll see where that cliffhanger takes us. But man, if you want to wait to read this issue for next week, I recommend doing that if you don't want to be spoiled. Moving on to number 8, which is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 91. And this issue, I was looking forward to, because the last one we got to see Ben and Pete teased that they're gonna team up, and now they teamed up here, and their banter and their chemistry was a lot of fun. I don't think this was a oh my god wow moment like I was getting with the Queen Goblin stuff, and I don't know, I do like Misty and Colleen as characters, but I don't love their connection into this arc. I feel like there could have been a more organic way to put them in Spider-Man, or give them their own comic series. So that one kind of I wasn't as interested in that arc, but I do like the relationship between Ben and Spidey in this issue. I thought there was a lot of good humor that Kelly Thompson's always great at doing. And the cliffhanger is pretty interesting with this other version of Lizard. So where is that going to take us? We haven't seen Connor in a while, especially an arc for Connor in a while. There are 2 different artists in this book, which I don't love when comics do that, where you have very different styles, and it's obviously because scheduling, they just need 2 artists. And I felt like that was a little messy for the visuals for this one. But I had a good time with it. I still think there's a lot of good things to enjoy here. So overall, I'm going to give that 3.5 stars. And I don't remember if I gave Daredevil a rating. That was 3 stars. Moving on to number 7. Speaking of spider people, that is Spider-Woman, issue 20. And if you're just looking for a good time, that's exactly what this issue is. The villains, where you think they're going to be like all these vicious, talking about bad guys doing bad things. It's just this really fun, comedic characters that are not very good at being villains coming together to try to fight Spider-Woman. And there's just some really great comedic moments there. And then also just slowing things down after some big arcs where Jessica's deciding, what do I do? Do I become a superhero again? Or, what am I doing with my life? And there's a good cliffhanger with the villains. There's some good character moments between Lindsay and Carol and Jessica's niece. So overall, I thought it was just a well-rounded issue with some really great comedic art style, some good action here. So it was just a really good filler issue. I don't want to call it filler because it actually does progress the plot well, but it felt like this breather issue, which I enjoyed. It slowed things down a bit and just had fun. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Strange, issue 1. This is the new Doctor Strange book. I am not a Magic fan. I'm not even a Doctor Strange fan, but I do like the idea of having a new character and jumping into lore that I don't know, because I also, way back when, was not a Thor fan and really got into Thor because of Jane Foster and her human voice for that series. And then Donny Cates jumped onto Thor, and it's been amazing. So I've been really enjoying Thor, a franchise that I never thought I could get into. Same thing for Daredevil. The Mark Waid stuff got me into Daredevil. It took a break for a while, and then Chip Zdarsky got me into it. So it really just depends on the run. Never say never to a character. So I'm like, let me try out this Doctor Strange thing because, hey, it's not just Doctor Strange. It might be very new reader friendly. And I thought it was pretty new reader friendly. If you didn't read Death of Doctor Strange, you don't really have to. I mean, I definitely think there's some notes to it, but I only read the first 2 issues of that one, and I didn't really feel lost. Also, Clea, I don't really know her as a character, but I got the gist of her. She kind of has this Emma Frost take to her. Maybe it's just the style, but I feel like her wit and her humor is very similar. I liked that it was her just owning being Sorcerer Supreme and in her relationship with Steve. Now, I don't like the overall arc of, okay, let's try to bring Doctor Strange back to life because he just died. It goes back to the whole big question and the big topic of comics always is, does death matter? And when you bring them back literally the issue after they die, it definitely doesn't matter. We have things like Alfred, where I feel like that mattered a little bit more because we had some breaks with him. And same thing for Wolverine, or when Spider-Man died with Superior Spider-Man, we really didn't see him that much. So taking an actual break brings that death to mean something, and for this character to mean something as well. When Jane was Thor, there wasn't any hint that Thor was gonna, or Odin's son was gonna become Thor again. So it made Jane's journey feel more special. So when you're having a whole book about like, oh, I want to bring back Stephen Strange, it kind of takes away the emotion and the weight to the story. So I don't love the overall plot, but I liked her. I enjoyed her vibe. I love the colors for this book, especially the magic. I think it opened very well with the Doctor Doom and her interaction. Overall, I enjoyed this issue. I don't know what it means for the full series, but I thought it was a pretty good opener from a character point of view. Even though I thought the pencils could have been a little stronger here, I think the colors really made it very vibrant. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Batman issue 121. And this was just a really good end of arc for Williamson. I believe he has that one more Shadow War big crossover between Deathstroke and Robin and Batman, which I am so excited for. I'm excited for that build up and what that means. And Williamson's, I guess, final goodbye to Batman as Chip Zdarsky takes over. But this was just a good one and done detective story where we get to see, where his relationship is with Lex, what that means for Batman Inc. And the artwork is just so good. I love the theme of the light and the darkness. I don't really care that the Ghostmaker takes over the group. I'm not a huge fan of Ghostmaker, but leads into the crossover pretty well for this last issue. I thought there were some good character beats here, and overall it was a fun arc, and I hope we get to see these characters interact again. And it was a good way to kind of cleanse the palate after such a big run with Tynion, and I guess something that's gonna be a very big run with Chip Zdarsky. So moving on, and that was number 5, and I gave that 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 4, which is Rogue Sun, issue 1, a book I was super excited for, still super excited for. And man, if you enjoy superhero stories, I think you're gonna really enjoy this. I feel like it really put what we know about the superhero story on its head, and it was a very likable character, even though he's very teen angsty. So you kind of have this Batman character, but definitely run through legacy. So we learned that our main character, the 17-year-old boy's father, dies, but he's not really close to his dad. He kind of had another family, and he pretty much grew up with his single mom. And then everyone knows this guy's a superhero except him. He's like, oh, and then he just kind of takes over the mantle. He's like, oh, okay, what do I do with this? The very thing that made my dad leave is making me become this hero. And really, this estranged family is very interesting as well. What's his relationship going to be with his siblings and the woman that his father married? So there's a lot of potential for a really great supported cast here. And by the end, it seems like the dad's actually alive. So there's definitely some interesting mythos here. I love the art. I love that it's very similar to Dan Mora's style, very facial expression driven. And overall, it felt like a new chapter for a character that's going to have a lot of legs. And I thought it was a good origin story, but it also was nice that it felt like I had more of a past. Sometimes with origin stories, like, oh, this is the first hero who's ever done this. But because it was driven on legacy, you could tell there's this whole mythos behind us where we're going to learn with the character what this mythos is all about. And I like the darker feel. I like that it was in New Orleans. You know, that's a very different setting for superheroes. And I just thought it had a lot of promise. And very excited to see where this one's going to go. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is She-Hulk, issue 2. Last issue left us on a really big cliffhanger, and this issue, we follow up on that cliffhanger with Jack of Hearts. If you don't know who he is, I feel like Rainbow does a really good job at explaining who he is. If you do know who he is, I think Rainbow does a good job at telling us what the hell he's been up to. And you kind of feel for this character who's definitely been painted as the villain over the years for killing Scott Lang. And we get some really interesting little beats. That's what I love about Rainbow's writing, is just the little moments where it's about how he hasn't eaten since George W. Bush was president, or maybe the other Bush was president. We get little moments like that where it's like, okay, who is this guy? What's wrong with him right now? And, how he doesn't really want to interact with the Avengers with it. But then we do have smaller moments with Jen getting back to being a lawyer and trying to get her life back on track. So we get those moments. And then, of course, in a Rainbow classic way, we get the cliffhanger where it looks like there's definitely a proof that this is probably not the Jack of Hearts we all know who died. There's something else behind it. So it's just a really well-rounded issue, comedic, emotional, progresses the plot very well, very character-driven, artwork splendid, very clean, bright. Just a really, really solid issue. That makes me even more excited to see what this run's going to be all about. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Dark Knights of Steel, issue 5. And, last issue I was a little worried. It was an exposition issue. Loved the exposition issue. It did such a beautiful job at not making it feel like an exposition issue. Where this issue, we get to see all the aftermath of Zala, I think that was her name. Zala? Yeah, Zala killing Black Lightning's son. And she's like, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. What are you talking about? So I love that moment because she's trying to get on the good side of her girlfriend, who's Wonder Woman. So we're getting to see the more interpersonal relationships form here. We get to see a little bit from Poison Ivy and Harley and what their relationship is like in this universe. But the big moment of this issue is that Bruce reveals to Clark that he's his brother, and Clark does not take that well. He's like, well, I don't care. You're not part of this family. Goodbye. So this is not the Clark we all know and love, because he wasn't raised by Ma and Pa Kent. But guess what? Ma and Pa Kent is now involved with Bruce and is going to be taking care of Bruce, which was such a great cliffhanger. It just really revolutionized everything you know from DC's mythos and puts it literally on its head for a really fun a fun story that you really don't know what's going to happen next, which is really what's so great to read this book. And also just the character moments. I really love the character moments in here, and the artwork is breathtaking. It's just such a good book. So overall, giving that one 4.5 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, which is Crossover issue 12. And man, this is just, I'm honestly speechless. It's such a good book from a writing perspective, from an art perspective. It does everything right, and it reinvents itself. The opener is Robert Kirkman talking to Negan, talking about how he created Negan and why he created Negan, and you get this very Robert Kirkman's, what he's known for from the mainstream audience is how he brought comics to the mainstream, and that every comic he makes is going to become a TV show and movie. And, some comic fans are like, oh, just keep it in comics. And then others are obviously like, oh, cool, I'm going to see my favorite comic become a TV show. And we really get to see the man behind the brand. And I think that's so special because, with Kirkman being such a big writer of comics, it was nice to kind of humanize him here, and humanize The Walking Dead, which is such a big franchise, to make it, bring it down, say, okay, this is why it's important and this is why I did it. As he talks to one of the biggest indie characters ever, and that's Negan. And Negan just not caring and being all in character and literally killing Robert Kirkman in an invincible way. So the visuals are very Ryan Otley, and eyes are popping out, and you're like, man, that was just such a good scene. That it first of all, you have the grayscale of Negan, so you're doing something different with the art there, but then visually just making it such a Robert Kirkman book written. I don't know if it's actually written by Kirkman or not, or if it's written by Donny Cates, so that's interesting as well. I know with the Brian Michael Bendis one, it actually was written by Bendis. But that was really, really cool. And then we get towards the end as we kind of lead to what this whole book is about, and talking about how characters see the writers as villains. So we get to see this really interesting moral compass story, and it's building to a really interesting ending as Donny Cates will see if he's the hero or villain in this story, of his own story. So I really enjoyed this one. Artwork was great. The story was great. It's so inventive, and it just feels like history is being made with this book. And I love reading books like that. So overall, giving that 4.5 stars, and that's my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. In the comments below, let me know your pick of the week. And the viewer's pick of the week for last week was Step by Bloody Step. And here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I will see you guys in the next one.